Happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for fantasy football. And I am thankful that we have some questions that we need to dive into here. First one coming from the Soaring Eagle. Says, Flex, Hawkinson, Laporta, do not start any receiver in Denver outside of Sutton, Douglas Moore, Pierce, Warren, or Nick Westbrook-Hakeem. I'm probably going to go out on a limb here and say that I'm assuming this is David Moore, not DJ Moore. If this is DJ Moore, you very easily go through and play Moore. Now, I will admit, a little bit concerned regarding what we have with the target distribution, where you actually do have a considerable amount of targets going in the direction of Keenan Allen, of Roma Dunze, but you still have DJ Moore with the vast majority of points, of course, this past week. I think DJ Moore, you can still say, is the wide receiver one in Chicago from a fantasy perspective, and it's a good matchup going up against the Detroit Lions. Now, the concern I have is that this isn't DJ Moore. Instead, this is David Moore. And if that is the case, for me, I'd probably go out on a limb, and I would actually start TJ Hawkinson, as crazy as that sounds, where if you are looking at Hawkinson, you do see a season-high snaps, season-high routes run this past week. So it does look like the role is expanding in the direction that you'd want. Now, Rob, fourth quarter, coming through with our next question. Here, we need a flex between really Ramondre and Taysom Hill. I can't consider Deebo Samuel with the expectations that you're going to have no Brock Purdy today. I'm sorry, Sunday, that is, of course. Honestly, I just absolutely hate saying to play Ramondre. You just have an extremely low floor. The last thing I ever want to do is tell two people back to back that they want to be playing a tight end in their flex spot, but I think here I may end up going with Taysom. I'm pulling up the Underdog picks just to see if I can get some updated projections on what you have with Taysom Hill. The thing with Taysom is if you look at sportsbooks currently, they are giving a pretty large premium to this game where you should have a lot of points scored between the Rams and the Saints. Now, of course, if you're going to look at New Orleans, you have Alvin Kamara, and that is frankly it. None of the other running backs have turned out to be anything. You have no receivers here left either. Taysom Hill currently is higher lower 62.5 total yards than Underdog. I think you probably have more receptions for Taysom, while at the same time, I think you have more touchdown upside. So you know what? F it. I think this is now back-to-back questions where we're going to go ahead. We're going to put the tight end in the flex. Now, who's Ryan? Always happy to see it. Says, need a win this week for a bye. Help me. Okay, so we need a tight end and a flex. We go Hawkinson over Laporta. I am starting Sam Laporta this week. Let me just double-check that I have Laporta in my own lineup. But expectation is this Lions team is the highest scoring offense in the NFL. At least that's what sportsbooks are telling us, and that's what sportsbooks tell us most weeks. And most weeks, they are true on that front. For me, yeah, we still don't have updated news with Kincaid. So I think we definitely go Hawkinson over Laporta. Just at this point, it's more comfortable projecting the target share. And then going over to the flex, while Tyreek Hill has been very disappointing, I still think you have to consider him. Now, expectations for this Dolphins offense are significantly lower tonight given this matchup. So honestly, I'd probably go ahead and I'd take Terry McLaurin. Obviously, 2 weeks ago, he was an absolute bum against Philly, but it was a really tough matchup. Now, Cappy Betts coming through says, just snuck into the playoffs and need lineup advice. My friend, thank you. And I hope that I am able to help you out here. So quarterback, we are just jamming in Love. Good spot against Miami. Running back, you absolutely have to play Chase Brown, a locked and loaded starter regardless of matchup. 3 straight weeks with seeing over 80% of the snaps, one of the best offenses in the league. Wide receiver, if Smith does play, we go with Devonta Smith. Last I saw, I don't necessarily think that we have clarity on this front, though. I mean, I have Smith and Waddle both on my own team as well. I currently have Smith planned out on the bench. If we get word before the Miami game that Smith is practicing in full, I think you pivot over to Devonta Smith from Jalen Waddle, but it's just difficult not really understanding or not really knowing what we should expect with who plays there. We're going to go with McBride there at tight end, Kenneth Walker very easily at the flex, and then we're going to go with Bucky Irving in the flex spot as well in a phenomenal matchup against Carolina. Now, next question coming out from Ideas Fits. we need a flex between Malik Neighbors and James Cook. So right now you actually do have the Buffalo Bills favored by about 7 points. They should be able to run the ball in this game against the Niners. While at the same time, the Giants project to be the third worst offense in the NFL this week. They are currently, the second worst offense in the NFL this week. They are currently on their third quarterback. So for me, I think it's probably a pretty easy spot. You go ahead, you play James Cook, and we probably just bench Malik Neighbors and don't have to think too much about it either. Now, let's move this over to our next question from Wazy. Here says, love the show. Who would you start at wide receiver 2 and flex? So right now, we are waiting for news regarding DK Metcalf. I think the plan is to play both DJ Moore and Metcalf. Obviously, we want to put DJ Moore in at wide receiver, given the fact that he plays today. DK Metcalf down in the flex, just in case we do end up having to make a pivot. And if DK Metcalf doesn't play, with this being a full PPR format, maybe it's going to be a little bit tougher. But the two main guys I'd be looking at would be Nick Chubb and Tank Dell. Obviously, Gus Edwards stepping in for Dobbins this week. But the thing that we have with Edwards and Nick Chubb is they both have the same red flag where neither player should really have much of a role at all as a receiver. Now, you can make the argument that the Los Angeles Chargers are a better offense and maybe have more trips to the red zone. But at the same time, I would just say that Nick Chubb's the much more talented running back. So it is tough, but I think plan A is Metcalf. Plan B, it's you choosing between Tank Dell, Nick Chubb. But I don't think there's a world where I start Gus Edwards personally. Now, John coming through with our next question. Here, you got to play Jaden Daniels at quarterback, assuming it's a 4-point passing touchdown league. You still have the rushing upside. Running back, we go with Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker. I'm pretty confident we're going to put JT in the flex. Wide receiver, Puka and Nico are absolute auto starts. And down here in the flex, obviously T. Higgins has been by far and away the best option here. But I think this week, you're actually in a better spot for Jonathan Taylor than what we have seen as of late. This week, you do have the Colts actually favored in this game going up against the New England Patriots. So I think it's one of the very rare instances where we can actually see the Colts deciding to run the ball in the second half. Now let's move this over to our next question coming out from John. John, we are choosing a running back between Najee and Bucky Irving. Somebody who has Najee on their team, trust me, I wish I had Bucky Irving instead. We're going to play Bucky in a great matchup in a much better offense. Going down to the flex, looks like Courtland Sutton is an absolute must-start wide receiver at this point. I mean, the man over the past 5 weeks is averaging 10 targets a game. The offense is pretty damn good as well with how Bo Nix is playing. And then I think we go with Malik Neighbors. But, of course, since Malik Neighbors plays on Thursday, what I would do is I'd put Neighbors there at wide receiver, and I'd move DK Metcalf down to that second flex spot just in case something does happen where DK Metcalf potentially misses this week. Now, Dizzle coming through with our next question. A tight end, we're choosing between Cade Otton and Tucker Kraft. I'm going to go with Cade Otton. It's a great matchup. Obviously, lowered expectations for Cade Otton with Mike Evans back in this offense in comparison to where they were before the bye. But again, really good matchup for Cade Otton. Not only do you have a good matchup, but at the same time, you do have the Bucs projecting out to be a top 5 offense in the NFL in total points scored this week. And here, if we get word today that it seems like Pacheco's going to miss whatsoever, I think you go ahead and you play Kareem Hunt. And if not, I think you can take Jaden Reed. Obviously, I'm not the biggest Jaden Reed fanboy, given the fact that this is a receiver where you are having to deal with Watson, Wicks, Dobbs, Kraft, all taking targets usually. But now you have no Romeo Dobbs this week, so I think Jaden Reed is a much better play than usual. And I like the matchup as well. Now, Mark coming through says, crazy, but Tracy is a gut feeling blow-up game. Are we going to put him in the flex? No, there's no way in hell. Not with how strong your team is, my friend. We have Amon-Ra St. Brown that you have to lock and load at wide receiver. Sounds like he'll be good to go. Evan Ingram versus Sam Laporta. If you told me that Lawrence was good for this game, it'd be Evan Ingram very easily. Now, obviously, we may not have the information at our disposal to make that call right now, so if you think Lawrence is going to miss, you go Sam Laporta. If you think Lawrence is going to play, you go Evan Ingram. I just simply don't know at this point. And for me, full PPR format, I'm still going to take Garrett Wilson. Obviously, with Wilson, we do have lowered expectations as well, knowing that this is just a much worse offense. Now, you do have the implied team total much higher than the Giants, though. But it's a much worse offense than we were expecting at the beginning of the season. Obviously, it's very difficult to come out here and make an argument that Rodgers is some bona fide stud. Okay, good. We only have 5 more questions to get through here on the site. So I'll say one thing, of course, if you ever wanted to get a guaranteed answer, just go over to flockfantasy.com, hit the personal advice button, and then you can go through and send in a question for the live stream. I'm sure everybody here knows that. Or also, we are actually going to be able to get to some of the questions in the chat as well. But I am on the road, as you can tell, so I don't have my usual setup. So the chat will have to be on my phone. But I can read a question from AJ coming through with the chat right now. It says, Happy Turkey Day, Mason. I have 2 flex spots that need to be filled, and I can't decide between Dowdle, Swift, Laporta, Mooney, Pittman, and Brian Robinson Jr. Swift, brutal matchup, horrible game environment. They are like 9-point dogs here. Between... If you told me Mooney was going to be good to go, I think Mooney would be very appealing here in a full PPR format. Brian Robinson did practice yesterday. It looks like Brian Robinson may be trending towards being good to go. I think you still probably end up playing DeAndre Swift here, even though I hate it. I'm playing DeAndre Swift on my own team this week, and it feels disgusting. Honestly, F it. I think you play Swift, Brian Robinson. Have some fun. Get to watch some action tonight. Today. But Broke Smoke says, going against my divisional rival, we are both 8-4. Here, quarterback, it's going to be easy for me to go Kyler over Herbert in a 4-point passing touchdown league. Tight end, we're going to go David Njoku over Laporta. Anybody but Laporta. I'm tired of this dude. And then going down to what we have in the flex. It's a half PPR format, so maybe the receivers are a little bit less intriguing. I'm assuming that Deebo Samuel's going to miss. So, I'm actually probably going to end up playing Rico Dowdle, where you do have the Cowboys favored by about 3.5 points here, so they should be able to run. Now, Raul coming out with a massive dono. My guy, I really appreciate you. Let me hook you up with a free start set question so you can send one in for free. Next week says, playing versus Hall in the number 1 team in the league analyzer. So I grab Braylon Allen. Let's freaking go. Who do I drop? Any other advice? Playoff bound flock league rules. Really appreciate you, my guy. We just dropped a flock league episode. I'm actually going to be watching that as soon as we end this live stream. But anyway, Stroud versus Sam Darnold. Obviously, Stroud has been the most disappointing quarterback in fantasy really so far this season. I still think it's a good matchup against Jacksonville. You have Nico Collins back at 100% health. I think you probably go with Stroud. If you're looking at who you drop here, I think you drop Jordan Mason, given the struggles that you have with this San Francisco 49ers offense. Even if you were to potentially have an injury to McCaffrey, I'd rather have like Braylon Allen in the instance of an injury to Brees. I'd rather have Trey Benson in the instance of an injury to James Conner. And we're going to go Chuba Hubbard in this second flex spot, where with Hubbard, I was very concerned about us potentially seeing, say, some usage for Jonathan Brooks on third down. Jonathan Brooks taking something here, and it turned out to not even be really close to that. Now, Colin coming through says, get scarred by a tough matchup, cold weather with Tyreek, Lawrence injury with Brian Thomas Jr., and the bad offense with Rico. Well, I really appreciate you. Let me hook you up with a free start set question, so next week you can send one in for free, my guy. Here, it friggin' sucks. I think you have to go Tyreek Hill. Obviously, the Dolphins have been phenomenal over the past 2 weeks. I agree with you. I think given the weather, given the matchup, you actually do lower expectations. You are seeing that with sportsbooks currently, where they did project out the Dolphins be a top 5 scoring offense in the NFL last week and the week prior. But here, expectations are much lowered. But also at the same time, we can see some of this Jonnu Smith production going over in the direction of Tyreek Hill. That wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world. So I think I stand by Tyreek. He's effectively had double-digit fantasy points every game that Tua's played in full this season. So even if he's been disappointing, it's not like he's been horrendous. He's definitely not a wide receiver 1, but he's still somebody you can play. We're going to go A-Rich over Brock Purdy here for J.D. Skinner. I also love the profile pick. This is probably one of my favorite profiles. But With Purdy, expectations are he is missing. At least A-Rich would get the rushing upside. Going over to running back, we're going to be going with Pacheco if he's good to go. James Conner is a backup pivot. Tight ends, I think I go with Kyle Pitts with the expectations that Miami falls down just a bit here. And then down in that flex spot, we're going to go with James Conner despite it being a really tough matchup. Robbie coming through says, happy Thanksgiving, Mason. Who would you start running back to? Happy Thanksgiving, my friend. Here between Dowdle and Isaiah Pacheco, obviously it's very tough without seeing the rest of the roster and knowing who the backup options that you would have are with Pacheco. I would say with 100% certainty that if Isaiah Pacheco plays on Sunday, which I think he probably will, I'd rather have Pacheco. I'm sorry, not on Sunday, on Friday. But I would rather have Pacheco over Dowdle. Obviously, we don't have that clarity right now, or at least I haven't seen. But honestly, I would still probably plan on going with Isaiah Pacheco, where it is just too good of a spot where they are pretty much 2 touchdown favorites in this game. And real quick, we actually had an influx of questions last second, so we got to get through these quickly. T-Thigh coming through. We're going to go Kyler Murray over Bo Nix. They're back-to-back in our rankings this week. They're very close. If you want to go Nix, not going to fault you. We go Brees and David Montgomery, assuming Brees plays. Bucky's going to be the backup for Brees. Wide receiver, we're going to go with T. Higgins and Puka Nacua. And then if Brees doesn't play, we pivot over to Bucky Irving in a great matchup. Vex Dots coming through. We need a wide receiver and a flex. It is crazy to say, but at this point, I think you can strongly consider Courtland Sutton ahead of Tyreek Hill. For me, just to let you know, if it was my own team, I would still probably stand by Tyreek. And then, dear God, you have freaking Derrick Henry to put in the flex spot. I was going to say we were going to be able to get Sutton in the flex, but if you have Derrick Henry in the flex, then obviously there's no conversation there at all. But Phil, always happy to see us. Says 5-7 don't look good for me, but we are still fighting. You can definitely get into the playoffs at 7-7. You cannot lose this week. Looking at what we have a quarterback between Geno, May, and Rodgers, I'm going to stick by Geno here. It is a really tough matchup, of course, going up against the Jets. However, going over to running back, we are going to be going plan A, Chase Brown, Breece Hall. Plan B, pivot over to Travis Etienne if Breece doesn't play. Wide receiver, London, Brian Thomas. Tight end, Mark Andrews. And then down in the flex, I think plan A is Devonta Smith. If Smith does not play, however, then you're probably going to end up having to pivot over to Travis Etienne. But obviously, it is an awkward spot with the injuries. Now, Aiden coming through. We are looking at the flex between Bucky, Chubb, Dowdle, Javonte, DJ Moore, Josh Downs. Given the matchup that you have for Bucky, plus the receiving usage that we saw this past week, I do think you have to go ahead. I think you have to take Bucky Irving here. Hellboy Jordan, always happy to see you, my guy. Let me look you up with a free start set question. So next time you send one in, it is on the house says, happy Thanksgiving, bud. Non-PPR, which receivers are you going to go with? 66 points out of the playoffs, probably not making it. So we are just chasing the highest ceiling possible. Highest ceiling possible, we go A-Rich over Stroud. Running back, we're going to go CMC, Kyron. Wide receiver, if we're chasing the highest ceiling possible, we go Nico, JSN. Tight end, we're going to go David Njoku. And then down here in the flex, we are going to go with Aaron Jones with the 3-down workload. But if you're 66 points out, we got, 2 weeks left? Yeah, we are needing a miracle here. A-Hands coming through with our next question. Quarterback, we go Allen over A-Rich. Running back, we're going to take David Montgomery. Wide receiver, we are going to lock in London as well as CeeDee Lamb. Tight end, you go with Trey McBride. And down in the flex spot, we are going to go with Tyrone Tracy. But I'd actually recommend putting Tracy at running back and moving a running back down to the flex since he plays today. Mark says, if you're on Pacheco, I also really like Tracy in this league. For me, I would plan on Pacheco. And as a backup option, you have James Conner to pivot over to. Now, if you really wanted to go with Tracy, it is a decent matchup. Now, JC Giac coming through. Wide receiver, we're looking at Debo, Wilson, Devontae Adams, Josh Downs. I think you go with the Jets. I mean, I absolutely hate it. If you needed a flex, you throw Aaron Jones down there. But the thing is, no downs, and I can't rely on Debo Samuel, especially with the Purdy injury. I mean, Debo wasn't even good with Purdy. But Mark coming through. Let me hook you up with a free start set question. My friend says, last one, thankful for everything you do. Have a nice Thanksgiving. Is it crazy to start Taysom in the flex? Really appreciate you, my guy. I'm surprised we're starting Russ at quarterback knowing that there's nobody on bye this week. But down here in the flex spot, I understand you wanted to go with Taysom. Obviously, the man dropped 40 points the last game he played, and it's a good environment going up against the Rams. Should be a very high-scoring game, while at the same time, you really don't have anybody to compete with in New Orleans. But with that being said, for me personally, I'm going to go with Jaden Reed, where we've had a little bit of a larger sample, and at the same time, you have no Romeo Doubs, so hopefully you have him expanding his role here. Now, Waddle coming through says, hey, we need help with the flex and tight end. Thank you. No, thank you so much. Quarterback, we are going to go with Cousins. Tight end, I think we go Zach Ertz over Laporta. And then down here in the flex, for me, I would go with Harrison. But I think a lot of other people would tell you to just go ahead and play Rico Dowdle. But I think we got through the questions. If anybody else has something, please drop it in the chat. I'd be happy to try to answer as many as I possibly could. Brian says Rico, Waddle, or Jonnu in the flex. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take Rico. Joe says Rico, Tracy, Hill. I'm probably going to go with Rico. Joel says Pacheco or Neighbors. God, is the stream lagging for everybody? Please tell me this stream has not been lagging last night and today. Obviously, I've not seen it much. Please let me know in the live chat. How bad have we been lagging? Casey says, yeah, a little bit. Dear God. It is what it is. Benjamin says Sutton or Evans. You have to play Mike Evans this week. Joey says Pollard, Tyreek, or Mooney. Please go through and play Tyreek. Feed says start 2, Warren, Braylon Allen, James Conner. I'm going to go with Connor and then Allen if Brees misses. Diego says between Higgins and Pickens, is it still Higgins? It is extremely close. Honestly, I think if flip a coin, up to you. Jay Green says Disley or Kraft. I think Kraft is a little bit more interesting now that you have no Romeo Doubs, but Disley has been much better. Markin says Purdy or Caleb. If these are your only options, you go Caleb. I'm very afraid that Purdy may miss. Gage says Rashad White or Rico Dowdle. We're going to go ahead. We are going to take, dear God, honestly, up to you. Rashad White, obviously really good matchup, but we are going to assume that you actually do have Bucky taking the majority of it. And real quick, I'm stupid. I thought the game, I am so sorry for anybody whose question I answered on the site maybe a little too quickly. Usually we try taking as much time with it as we could. I honestly, for whatever reason, thought the game was about to start at 12:15, but we got another 15 minutes or so. So maybe I should have waited a little bit more when we were answering those questions. We're taking a little more time, so I'm sorry. But Cooler Hand says Ramondre or Pacheco. Dear God, I wish I could start Pacheco instead of Ramondre this week. You go with Pacheco. I'm stuck with Ramondre in my own team. And let me see with my own team real quick, just to make sure I don't have to make any additional pivots. Obviously, it's just so much tougher on Thanksgiving when we have all these question marks up in the air with injuries. So the guys on my bench right now, I'm planning on benching Waddle. I think there's a chance I need to play Waddle today. Like Metcalf missed practice, Devonta Smith missed practice. There's a real shot that Smith misses the game. The players I have going in today's games, DeAndre Swift, Sam Laporta in about 10 minutes. And then on the bench, I may get in Waddle, who plays late tonight, depending on the rest of the practice reports that we have today. Okay. Littles Lesnar says Bucky or Montgomery. Definitely go with David Montgomery. Like, let me just be real quick with Bucky Irving, because I know a lot of people were upset with us ranking as a Bucky Irving as a running back 2 this week, rather than a locked and loaded running back 1. While 100% I understand where y'all are coming from with Bucky Irving, the man looked so damn good last week, and he's been hyper efficient all season. Y'all are right to get excited about Bucky Irving, but at the same time, let's pump the brakes just a bit in comparing him to players like David Montgomery, where if you were looking at options such as David Montgomery, I mean, Bucky blows up in a game where his offense has 4 rushing touchdowns. Of course, in the game where his offense has 4 rushing touchdowns, Bucky will look good. So it's a good matchup against Carolina, but he's still very much in a committee. Not telling you to bench Bucky Irving by any means, except if you're comparing him to guys like David Montgomery. Then yes, I guess I'm telling you to bench him. Okay. Joseph says Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix this week. For the love of God, just like we said last week, if you have Jaden Daniels, you got to play Jaden Daniels. But real quick, I think we saw that we have a question coming in on the site. Let me make sure that we get that answered quickly. This coming out from Muhas says, Naeem here. Happy to see you. Need help. We need the number 1 spot. Well, you know, we're going to go with Jalen Hurts. Running back, you lock in Montgomery. I would play Dowdle as well over Javonte and Edwards. And really, it's down in the flex spot. The only conversations that you can have are getting Calvin Ridley out of this lineup, where if you are looking at Calvin Ridley in comparison to Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison, it's a game where the Cardinals are probably going to be forced to throw the ball a ton. They should have a better offense as well than the Tennessee Titans. What I would actually be most excited, if possible, is with Brian Thomas if Lawrence were to be good to go. But let me pull up the implied team totals that we have for the games today, as well as later this week. Because let me see if sportsbooks are telling us anything about the availability of Lawrence. You have an implied team total about 19.5 points for Jacksonville, which is right ahead of what you have with Tennessee. If Lawrence plays, you go Brian Thomas here over Calvin Ridley. And also very much, I think you could consider Marvin Harrison over both of them. But you do have safer targets with the combo of Ridley and Brian Thomas. Stacy, always happy to see you, says, is Pacheco startable? Should we start him over Rome in a PPR format? I would 100% start Pacheco over Rome. I mean, even if Pacheco is limited, he is in an elite offense in one of the best matchups you could possibly ask for. The Chiefs are double-digit favorites in this game. They are favored by about 13.5 points. Okay. So let me move this back over to the phone. Again, if you have any questions, drop them in the live chat. We are on the road, so sadly I'm not going to be able to bring them up on the screen. I will say, hey, y'all got to give me some props for this. We go through travel all day yesterday. We set up with this little travel thing I put together. This is a pretty high-quality live stream for it to be coming out of a suitcase. Some would say maybe your boy's turning into a professional with this. But anyway, Flamehawk, interesting name, says, Tracy or Brian Robinson at running back 2, and do we leave Pittman at the flex? Play both running backs. I have Pittman in a decent amount of underdog drafts. Like, I would love for Pittman to have a great day. And obviously, you're more excited about Pittman knowing that you have no downs, but still. Okay. Simi Valley Cruz is professional underdog sniper. I will say my underdog teams are freaking crushing it. Last I checked, I'm advancing about 40 Best Ball Mania teams at the moment. And we're having a ton of success with high stakes drafts. I still have, I think, 2 or 3 elimination teams live. Like, your boy crushed it this season. And obviously, everything's going to come down to the fantasy football playoffs. We'll see if we can win in the Flock League in the fantasy playoffs. We'll see if we can win some underdog tournaments in weeks 15 through 17. But with how it's looking right now, I am amped. Now, let's see. Joey says, would you start Kyler or Darnold at quarterback this week? Please go Kyler. You get the rushing upside with Kyler. Joseph says, what's your take on Breece Hall if he plays? I think you probably lower expectations with Breece, but the thing is, he's Breece Hall. You play him regardless. He's had one game with fewer than 4 targets this season. So no matter what, he's in your starting lineup. I'm assuming that he is active. Joseph says Jennings over Allen. Keenan Allen, sure. I will say in general, again, I want to pull this up. Maybe things have changed, but last I saw, it looked like Purdy was going to miss. Yes. You have an implied team total about 18.5 points here for the Niners. The only offenses this week that project to be worse than the Niners are the Browns, Giants, and Raiders. Those are the only 3 offenses that are supposed to be worse than the Niners. So how I'm viewing San Francisco right now is you start Kittle, you start CMC, Purdy's going to miss, and you bench the receivers. And another thing is, too, the Raiders have an implied team total of 14.75 points. The third worst offense in the NFL this week is supposed to be the Browns with an implied team total of 18 points. So it's not that the Raiders project to be the worst offense in the NFL this week in a really tough matchup against the Chiefs. It's that they project to be significantly worse than every other offense. So people are saying that the mic is messing up. Oh, well, we got 3 minutes left, so maybe we'll fix it for after with the live streams tonight. But yeah, again, I know a lot of people are upset with us ranking Jacoby Myers as like a wide receiver 3 this week. You don't want to play any of your Raiders. The only Raider you freaking play is going to be Brock Bowers. I don't want to play Myers. And Airback's coming through, says, hey, Mason, can you help me out? I was last place last week, jumped up 3 spots, need a win this week. Wide receiver, you very easily play Ladd McConkey. Down here in the flex, I don't play Dowdle. I think I go with Metcalf. And if we get a bad practice report where Metcalf doesn't practice today, we pivot over to Jaden Reed with no Dobbs. Juju, appreciate you, my friend. Let me hook you up with a free start set question. Love the profile pick. Says, happy holidays. Who would you consider putting into the flex wide receiver slots? Happy holidays, my friend. Please play James Conner at running back. In the flex, oh, dear God. I think I go Tyreek, as I know people are going to hate it. It's going to be tough between James Conner as well as Bucky Irving. I have James Conner ranked at running back 20, Bucky Irving ranked at running back 21. But looking at the matchups, full PPR format, you probably have to go ahead and you play Bucky. But James Conner is right there, and it's up to you. Landoff says, start 3, Chase Brown, David Montgomery, Breece Hall, Devon Achane. You play Achane, you play Chase Brown. You probably just play David Montgomery over Breece. Unless we get confirmation that Breece is at practice and Breece looks good to go today, right before this game. But obviously the issue is David Montgomery playing on Thursday. We may not have that confirmation by the time you need it. And Zvarn coming through. Running back, we have Dowdle, Pacheco, Chase Brown to look at. We are going to go ahead. We are going to take the running back with 80+% of the opportunities in his backfield in one of the best offenses in the league. Please, everybody, play Chase Brown. I know it's a tough matchup against Pittsburgh, but the Bengals still project out to be an above-average offense this week, and Chase Brown is a workhorse with a massive receiving role. And down in the flex, we're going to play on Isaiah Pacheco with the backup option of Devontae Adams if Pacheco is not good to go. But Mavium coming through says, flex Neighbors, Pacheco, or Kenneth Walker. I think you play it very safe. I think you just go ahead and take Kenneth Walker. Obviously, Pacheco, better matchup, better offense, but at the same time, you have the injury concerns. And with Malik Neighbors, just much worse offense. You do project to be a bottom 3 offense in the NFL this week in total points scored, while at the same time, you are on your 3rd quarterback. So I think it's maybe a little bit tougher to be in on Neighbors. Just go ahead and take Kenneth Walker there, my friend. But it looks like the game is about to kick off. I'm going to go over to that couch. We're going to throw on the Flock League episode on one screen, have the game going on another screen. Much love. Thankful for y'all. Thankful for fantasy football. Really do appreciate y'all. I'll be live streaming after the games tonight to talk about everything that happens and what I'm rooting for, even though it's not going to happen regardless, as I'm rooting for a big sample for today as always, but we're always let down. But much love. Really appreciate you, and really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.